Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zapersky. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the world of elite consultants, where you'll learn the strategies, tactics, and mindset to grow a highly profitable and successful consulting business.
Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. Joining Michael on the show today is Bill Troy, who's the co-founder of the Polaris Institute, a community of people utilizing the Polaris process, a science-based approach to life optimization through neurological performance. And he's also the co-founder of Civilis, a consulting company focusing on proprietary talent acquisition, client acquisition, company culture, and relationship-focused marketing programs. Now, as you're going to hear, Bill found a coach to help him find his personal path. He also mentioned hiring a consultant to get clarity to help him and his co-founder grow their company. And he dives deep on the personal and professional benefits of doing so. And if you want to follow in his footsteps and grow your agency, we are here to help. To work directly with the Consulting Success team to receive personal coaching and support to optimize and grow your consulting business, marketing, and revenue, visit consultingsuccess.com/grow to learn more and apply today. Okay, so now let me tell you a little bit more about what you're going to learn from today's episode and from Bill. The first is how to find fulfillment beyond your work, how to leverage a coach to grow professionally and personally, how specificity can lead to growth, how to understand human bias in order to fuel innovation and growth, the difference between a starter and a scaler and why that's important, and Bill's strategy to win enterprise clients, plus so much more. Here to share with you his full story and insights is Bill Troy. Enjoy.
Bill Troy, welcome.
Hey, happy to be here.
Can you just walk us through right now, how do you split your time between those two, and are you involved in Civilis at all today? Just give us a sense of how you're navigating that.
Sure. Those are just the two that are publicly known out there. I've got 2 million things going on all the time. But Civilis grew out of a marketing firm that my wife and I started together many years ago. It was about marketing from a relationship-based standpoint. It really diverged into two different paths. Today, my wife, Kim, is really the person who really runs Civilis. She's the primary consultant. And that has evolved into fractional COO. In the case of companies that are doing the entrepreneurial operating system or traction, it's a fractional integrator. She goes in and kind of helps them really get the ships to run on time and the trains to run on time and keep things organized. And then I've gone more in the direction of the human relationship, the more emotional journey of the entrepreneur. That's really what Polaris Institute is about. It's about really trying to figure out, how do we navigate the human element? It's great to put a business plan together. We got the plans on paper and emotional things appear, right? That either drive us forward or hold us back, and all that goes out the window. So that's really where Polaris Institute is. And that's where I'm spending most of my time these days.
With Civilis, you started that in 2010, I believe, with your wife. So it's been around for quite some time. What made you decide? I mean, you just described the kind of the differences between these two companies, but what ultimately made you decide to extract yourself from that and start Polaris with this new focus? Why not just kind of continue to build that existing consulting business? What was kind of going on and actually made you shift over?
Yeah, I would say it's a personal journey for me. I've been an entrepreneur for a long time. I had a market research company, Troy Research. We started in 1997 with a different business partner, Jonathan Little, and that company still operates today. He's purchased that company and runs it now. Then we started Civilis, and I found there was something inside of me that wasn't right. I really wanted to go on a different journey, a really an introspective journey. So even though Polaris Institute is about helping, consulting, coaching other people, it's really an inner journey for me and for the people involved in it. And I think for me, one of the things that a lot of people don't know if they're not an entrepreneur is what really motivates entrepreneurs. And most people think people start businesses to make money. And what I learned in my research and what I learned in my own life was that I was an entrepreneur, and a lot of entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs because they're about control. They're trying to control the world around them, right? This is what I want to do. This is how much I want to make. This is who's going to work for me. This is who we're going to work for. I mean, it really becomes about trying to control the entire universe. And, we were just kind of joking about how I live in the woods here. I mean, even to the point where I'm going to live by myself in the woods behind a gate, you kind of end up manifesting this life you want. And entrepreneurship is a seductive path to think you can get there. I found that for me, control I was able to forceful personality and compelling, and we built a company, we're Inc. 500, we did all these things. But in the end, control was elusive. You really don't have control over the universe. I don't want to get into a whole metaphysical thing, but ultimately you get older and pandemics happen and all these things. And it's like, I'm not really in control like I thought I was. I'm putting all this energy into being in control. And so many systems that are sold to business owners are about control. Get your sales in shape and whip your team into place. And like, anyway, that's a long way to say where I've been going.
Well, no, there's elements of that. I mean, I really resonate. I think I've come to the observation or belief that the only thing that we can ultimately control is ourselves, or how we think about and process what's happening in our minds and around us. But I want you to, if you can, just take us a little bit deeper into your path. When you had that feeling either bubbling up, maybe it was sitting there for a while, I think a lot of people in a similar position might say to themselves, yeah, I want to do this other thing. I think this is maybe more direction that I should go. But especially if you invested so much time and energy building a business, to shift away from that might mean, in your case, it might be different. So I'd love if you can give a little bit more context. But for some people, there's fear around leaving something that they've spent so much time building because they might lose income, they might lose opportunities. What happens if this new idea doesn't pan out? Take us through a little bit more, like ultimately what gave you the comfort or help to kind of propel you to take that leap, and any lessons that you learned around that. Because I think oftentimes people have that same feeling inside of they want to try something, they want to do something maybe within their business that's a bit different or something completely different, but they don't actually take that step. I'd love to hear a bit more about your experience with that.
Absolutely. Happy to share that. I've said before that in some ways, it seems like impossible to say. It doesn't seem right to say that you're blessed and cursed, but in some ways, you can be so blessed that you're cursed. You can set up a list of things you want to accomplish in your life, and you can actually check all those boxes off. And that's in a way where I got to, where it's like, okay, I have that, I have that, I have that. And I'm not happy. I'm not any happier than I was before when I had nothing, right? Or didn't do anything. For me, I basically eliminated every external excuse and kindly realized it's got to be in here. The happiness isn't coming from anything external to me. And I've done it all. I've run marathons, for decades of marathons and Inc. 500 business and live in the woods. You just start checking out and it's like, wow, what's left? Oh, it's me, right? And this relates back to what I think you spend a lot of time talking with folks on about in this podcast is the idea of a coach. Polaris for me grew out of a coach that I used to find my own path personally. But really what I came to realize was that what I needed to do was go into discomfort, right? If I was focused on control, really what I was doing was trying to isolate myself from all discomfort. I want to have whatever whiskey I want to have. I'm trying to eliminate all discomfort in my life. And at the point that you do that and you eliminated everything that's uncomfortable and you got everything, it's like, it didn't work. What I discovered was that the way to true happiness, the way to true growth is to go through discomfort and embrace it. Now, use a little analogy here that we use in our Polaris work, which is thinking about physical growth. If you're going to get better physically, you're going to get faster, stronger, more flexible, whatever you're going to do, you're going to go through some physical discomfort. We all understand you're going to have sore muscles, you're going to be out of breath, you're going to be sweating, doesn't feel good. Yet you embrace that because you know that on the other side of that discomfort is better performance, more capacity, more capability. You embrace physical discomfort when you're going through physical training, but a lot of us have never realized, never been taught that it's the same with mental discomfort, that you need to go through mental discomfort, the mental and emotional version of sore muscles and then being out of breath in order to get stronger and better and have more capacity in that area. We're just sort of taught in our society that any discomfort you have should be instantly medicated away or distracted away with a screen or whatever, and instantly in a drive-through somehow. Whatever I'm not liking should be immediately fixed. The idea of going through mental discomfort was like, for me, it was like, oh, wow, okay, that's going to be different and hard. That's the journey that I started taking, was to find it. And then that comes back to the idea of having a coach, which is the role of a coach in your life is to be the person you can trust to take you through that discomfort and know what's good and bad. Just like if you have a physical coach, they know to tell you to do one more rep or one more lap, not 10 more, but you can handle one more. And so the coach is the person that can say, yes, this is not feeling good, but this is good. Go a little bit further and now let's stop. And that's what you need to have, I think, from a mental and emotional standpoint too, is somebody to take, this is not going to be fun, but you need to go through this.
Yeah, I agree with so much of that. And my observation has been really anything that has been meaningful, usually there's some discomfort or some challenge involved in it. If it's just too easy, you typically don't really appreciate what you've created. And as you were speaking right now, Bill, it just reminded me of, I think that's what entrepreneurship is all about. Like when you take the path of building a business, oftentimes the reason why, maybe if you're, in your case, like you're checking off all these things, it's like those material things, but like that's not really why you were doing it. Different people might think that, but it's actually, as entrepreneurs, what we tend to enjoy is the journey. And the journey is where we have that discomfort. And then if all of a sudden that discomfort is gone because we're out the other side and successful, there's no challenges, we're not really being stimulated as much. And therefore it's not as rewarding. Thank you for sharing a bit of that. I'd love to hear, how did you then navigate for somebody who maybe is listening and joining us right now going, okay, like, yeah, I know I want to do this thing. I haven't done it for whatever reason. And I can see that I just need to go ahead and get started and give it a go, even if I quote unquote fail or have some lessons learned along those lines. Is there anything that you did when you were transitioning out of this previous kind of consulting business that I know your wife is now leading? Is there anything that you kind of took when you were saying, I want to make sure this ship still sails and is doing wonderfully as I leave that and focus on this new business, this new idea? Was there anything that you guys did there to make sure that things would continue to work really well as you extracted yourself?
Yeah, I actually had to make a description of what I wanted the next business to do. What was the purpose of it? Why do I want another company? I like starting companies. I like new ideas, but what's the point of this? It needs to have a different point than the last one. And for me in particular, that was about giving up control. How do you grow something? Because I found that my last company was successful. Well, all the companies have been successful, but only as far as I wanted to be successful. Interestingly, they all were limited as well by my desires, right? So they were supposed to support whatever I wanted in the universe. For me, that was an awakening that I was holding them back. I was the source of power and success and drove them, but then I also limited them. So that's weird. Never thought about that before. So now with Polaris, for example, as a business model, I'm having to explore with Anna, my partner, and the other people that are involved in the organization. What does it look like to build something that is beyond me, doesn't need me? And maybe that's easy for some people, but for me, that's been very difficult because I was all about control. So what does that look like? What do you let go of? How do you push, but realize I can't push just for what I want? I have to bring in other voices. It's a new dance that I'm trying to learn, is how to build something that is its own thing. We forget that a company is a legal entity. It's a legal person. Certainly if it's a corporation, it's a legal person just like you and I are people. Are we creating a person that can live and survive and grow and thrive on its own? Or are we creating something that's just a slave to us, that just does whatever we want? And so the idea of building something that has its own life, its own systems, that keeps going beyond us, for me, is what I'm exploring.
And for those who might be in a similar situation where they know they need to build team or essentially start delegating more and therefore lose some control in their mind, is there any lessons that you've learned or anything that you've done that you found to be helpful in feeling more comfortable to delegate or just delegate more effectively?
For me, it's all about finding people I can trust, because whenever, and this is one of the things I'm sure you've seen as well, everybody's got opinions. What you should do, what you should scale out, what you should buy, guys, do AdWords, do consult, do whatever, how to scale your business, how to get sales. Everybody will give you an opinion instantaneously. And they're very confident about it, and they show how they've helped everybody else do it. But you have to find the person that knows you, that you can trust. When they say this is the right thing to do, you're like, oh man, it doesn't feel right, but I'll trust you because I trust you. For me, it's a discernment of finding those people. That's really, I think, the key job. Once you've found those people, then you can go forward and trust them. I was just talking to a sales consultant about working with our company the other day, and she understood that. She said, you got to find what's right for you and the rest of the people on the team. That's more important than just whether it works, because a lot of things work. It's a matter of whether you feel good about it, whether you can feel like it's a good fit for you. So I think it's about finding the person or the people who because they're going to tell you to do things you don't like, which everybody will. The problem is that you don't know who to trust because they all sound like things you don't like.
Yeah. So we've kind of experienced this with when we started to tell our story more, like on the consultingsuccess.com, kind of our story page. We have a little video there, a little film, and then we have a list of our values and things of that nature. What we found is people started to use that language more when they would reach out to us. And I'm sure some people would go through that little film or read our values and read more about the company, and it would not resonate with them. And that's okay, right? So it would push some people away, but it also would attract more of the right people. And that's really what our focus is, to get more of the kinds of people that resonate with our values and that we really are confident that we can help. But at the same time, we're not trying to work with everybody. Knowing that there's that fit, I think is a really good insight and share. So I appreciate you bringing that forward.
The scary part is being specific, because you think when you're being specific, you're eliminating all these possibilities. But the more specific you can be, the more the right people appear. To say, I'm looking for exactly this kind of client or this kind of employee or whatever. And the more specific you can be, I find that all the time. If I'm sitting down with somebody saying, we need to hire somebody, you know anybody? I'm like, we need someone that's this and this and this, and they just had this position. And then, oh, you got to talk to Fred. Like, they instantly know a real person. More specific, I think, is the scary part that works.
Definitely. So let's talk about kind of some of the work you're doing at Polaris right now. I know you guys have kind of mentioned that neuroscience reveals that you are blind to opportunities and threats hiding in plain sight, which, as the more I think about it, makes complete sense. But it's a very powerful initial statement. Can you just explain, when you say that, what do you actually mean?
Right. The short version is that the new part of this has been proven using MRI technology in the last 10 years or so. I think we're the top of the food chain. But as a species, like as an animal, I'm round, slow, and soft. And I have no weapons. I have no defenses. I have nothing. Everything out there in the world is bigger, sharper, meaner, faster than us. And that was even more true back in the jungle or savannah. How can we keep from getting eaten? Well, our brain, right? So we think of every possible contingency and we head it off with a tool or a protective device or a house or whatever. Our brain is looking for threats to mitigate. We're addicted to threat mitigation. And that's a whole different topic we can get into about how addictive our world is, giving us threats to worry about. Like, how many hours in the world thinking of what we would have done if we were in a submarine at the bottom of the ocean? We're never going to go in a submarine at the bottom of the ocean, but we all just fixated. The whole planet was fixated for a few days on that threat. Well, I would have said this. I wouldn't have gotten on. Our brains just get fixated on these kinds of things. But anyways, our brain is detecting and mitigating threats all the time. The challenge is there's an engineering problem with our brain, and that is our brain is really expensive to use from an energy perspective. Our brain's always looking to mitigate all these threats as easily and cheaply as possible. It doesn't want to reprocess every single time you pick up a fork. What's this sharp thing? What do I do with this? No, it's a fork. Just use it. Your brain then memorizes everything it can that you've experienced in your life and then uses the version from memory whenever possible. This is how you tie your shoes you couldn't even explain to me how you tie your shoes. I don't know what the steps are. Just do it. Driving your car and going to work without even knowing you did it. Your brain runs on autopilot from memory almost all the time. It doesn't feel like that because it feels like, well, I can feel myself sitting in this chair talking to you, but my brain knows what it feels like to sit in this chair. So my brain's going, pull up that old feeling how it feels to sit in this chair, just give them that experience. So my brain's giving me the experiences it knows I should be feeling right now. The point is that once it knows that, it keeps using that version without ever checking to see if it's still accurate. So a great one from a business standpoint is money. We all learned what money was at some point in our youth or young adulthood. There was some moment when money made sense. Okay. For me, it was when I was 14 and my parents were getting shoes for the school year and they wanted to get the Sears canvas, whatever. And I'm like, no, the Adidas, mister, when you get your own job and your own money, you can decide what shoes you can get. And I'm like, okay, bing, I know what money is. Money is no one can tell me what to do ever again because I can make my own decisions. And the point is that my brain just locked that in and that is what money is. And so for the next 50 years, the more money I have, fewer people can tell me what to do. And it just runs on autopilot. You don't even think about it anymore. You don't even realize that you're thinking that. So that's how you end up with a scarcity mindset or abundance mindset or a money is value or money is love or whatever. And the point is that you just keep acting as though that's true, when in fact, it's just one version of what's true. It's just what was true for me at 14. It doesn't have to be true anymore. But we never go back and check. Our brains never go, hey, like today, let's check to see if we have a good version that's healthy of what money is in our current life or love or success or health or anything else. And so the point is that our brain is creating our experience from its past memories, and it never checks to see if they're valid anymore. And so the ability to stop and figure out, wow, this is what I think is true. Is it really true? Is the first step to being able to change what you see. And so many of the things that drive us forward or hold us back are things like that from our past that just keep just running on autopilot.
Hey, it's Michael here, and we'll be right back to the podcast. But first, are you ready to grow, scale, and take your consulting business and marketing to the next level? If so, our Clarity Coaching program may be a great fit for you. You'll work with our experienced team to set up a strategic plan for your business and coach you step by step in areas like how to consistently attract more leads, develop a magnetic message that resonates with your ideal clients, strategically package and position your services, earn higher fees, win more proposals, and scale your business. To find out more about Clarity Coaching and apply, go to consultingsuccess.com and click on coaching. I know that you work with both leaders and their teams in this area. Can you offer another maybe example or two that you see pop up in a business context that people might be dealing with either consciously or subconsciously right now, just kind of, part of the business landscape that is related to this?
Yeah, absolutely. For us, it gets down to really, it sounds weird, but it gets down to very small things. I'll give you two quick examples. One is that we're doing a lot of work in DE&I these days. And we have a lot of discussions internally in the company about the word bias. Like bias is a term that seems like it's a negative term. You don't want to have bias. You have bias. When in fact, our entire brains operate 100% of the time on bias. I'm biased about what's for lunch. I don't even see a salad. I see a hamburger when I think of lunch, right? Well, that's bias. What are you hungry for? What do you want? Where do you want to go? What movie do you want to see? All that is bias. So the idea that we are all 100% biased all the time then destigmatizes and normalizes bias to say we have to just stop and realize we're all biased because all our brain knows is what it's ever seen in the past. So we have to stop and go, what else could be possible? And we can use that in multiple ways. If we have a team, each person's bias is another perspective on reality that we can use to see multiple versions of reality. We can see different possibilities. It's fantastic for innovation. From a bias standpoint, we can realize we have groupthink going on. It's an okay thing. It's not, no one's good or bad. It's just the way our brains work. And I'll give you one little microscopic example that's so small, but can be so huge. One of the stories my partner Anna talks about is, what is a decision? I mean, that's like, okay, a decision is where you choose something, but it turns out it's not. In her case, she has a view of what a decision is as something that creates possibilities. A decision allows us to see more options beyond that. Like we've decided now, we can move on to the next thing. A decision is an energizing path creation tool for her. She likes making decisions. Her husband, who she was in business for years as well, is a person who believes a decision is an endpoint. A decision eliminates possibilities because you've just eliminated all the possibilities besides the one you chose, which is true. It turns out they're both true. If you're trying to work with someone and one person believes a decision needs to be made so we can have more options available to us, a decision needs to be delayed until we have every possible thing we could ever think of, there's friction there. And those two people can't get along and decide anything together. Something as simple as what is a decision? And the joke that she always makes is that when they were working together in their company, their employees used to say, if you want a decision made, ask Anna. If you want the right decision made, ask Austin, because he'll take the time to figure it. The point is that it's fundamental things like that that get in the way of a team. I mean, you're just like driving each other nuts because one of them won't make a decision. One of them is making a decision without half baked. And it's all that sort of stuff that becomes the human element that you have to navigate to succeed on a team.
I think it's a very interesting example, one that I've thought quite a bit about. And I'm interested in your perspective and what you've observed over the years. You've run multiple companies, Inc. 500 company and so forth. If we just use those two examples of Anna and Austin, to me, and from what I've seen, it feels like the more successful entrepreneur, or if we look at percentages, those that tend to make decisions even without having all the information, and those that look at it's better to make a decision and learn from it than just not and delay making a decision, tend to make a lot more progress and be more successful in the business world. Is that true from your experience or not?
Wow. I don't have data to back it up. As a person who is a quick decision maker, I'm going to say, yeah, go decisions. It's probably one of those things. Everything we find is always both a blessing and a curse. It's always a two-edged sword. It's probably one of those things. I could be an example of that where I have great initial success and then I get bored and I move on to something else. And maybe I'm a good starter, but I'm not a good scaler. And in fact, that's one of the things that's happening. We mentioned Kim is running Civilis now. She's a scaler. I'm a starter. Again, no right or wrong, but probably starters probably make decisions faster and scalers are probably more deliberate.
Sure. There's definitely a place for both, and both are very valuable. If I think about like an investment firm, you need to have those that are also going to pull you back a little bit and get all the facts and help you to make better decisions. But in entrepreneurship, at least at a certain level, if you're not taking action because you're just really like holding back all the time, it's hard to make progress. That was really the point. Okay. Once you started Polaris, right? I think you started in 2021. You're leveraging neuroscience and the kinds of things that you're talking about, right? To help leaders and teams perform better or just going to be more successful. Is this something that you found took off right away? Like, was this a hard sell? to get people to see the value of bringing in neuroscience and this kind of an approach? Or did people see the value in it right away and it just kind of took off? Like, just wondering, did it require a bit of education on your part, or what has been your experience of offering and selling something that maybe isn't top of mind for people right away from potentially, or is it top of mind? What's your experience been with that?
Well, we've found that it is top of mind in certain circles, and that's more of an enterprise type of circle. Entrepreneurial companies aren't typically at the point where they're working on something that nuanced. But when you're talking about enterprise companies, they are thinking about that. They're wrestling with massive human resource issues from the pandemic and from the work from home and just the idea of what is mental health. They have been very open to this because they're looking for a new solution. And in fact, this idea of mental health is something that we've really been able to explain to them, that they've only been focused on a mental health repair. You think of a physical repair, like, okay, well, hospitals, doctors, you have a broken leg. That's great. That gets you back in the game. But we're talking about getting stronger, like a workout regimen, like a gym. They've focused on adding mental health resources to help people take days off, recover. If you're in a team environment, that's like you're going to the sidelines and recuperating, going to the locker room. You're not with the team anymore. We're talking about how does the team work to get stronger and faster together. And they really have seen the gap there. They really have to figure out. And so, for example, in our case, our mental health and mental growth program isn't really as attractive in the HR department as it is in the operations department. It's like, oh, we can attach this to our business metrics and we can get stronger and faster, build capacity from a mental and emotional standpoint.
Did you see that right away, or did you try a different direction, kind of different path? Like, I'm wondering, when you took this new offering to the market, what did you initially see? And then did you have to make some pivots and adjustments to get to where you are today?
Definitely had to make some pivots. I was listening to your interview from a few weeks back with Jamie Duragi, and Jamie and I are both EO members. And so is Anna, my partners. We're both in the entrepreneurial world where a lot of self-starters, a lot of self-built companies. And since we're at that place in life, we were exploring these topics. We thought this will be the same sort of thing for our peers, right? People will want to explore this. And it wasn't quite the case. I mean, you kind of reach a phase in your business life where you realize at some point, I guess I have more gray hair than you.
You have more hair than I do, Bill, to start, so.
There is going to be life beyond your business. You're going to sell it at some point. It's going to end at some point. You're going to retire at some point, and life will go on for 20, 30, 40, who knows, 50 years. I don't know. I know some very young entrepreneurs that have had big exits, and now they're like, okay, I got a huge bank account and it's just Tuesday. And like, what am I doing today? There is something beyond business. And I think the few of us from the entrepreneurial world that are involved with Polaris are in that phase, but most people in the entrepreneurial world are still building their business and working toward that.
I'm wondering, how did you arrive at to be able to identify that your program, your offer with Polaris was really a great fit for enterprise as opposed to mid-market, or even let's say, smaller businesses? Where did that learning take place? Like, what actually happened? Was it a series of conversations, or if you could just walk us through, how did you get to that level of clarity where okay, this is actually where we should focus as opposed to other areas of the market?
Yeah, we hired a consultant to do a research project for us and to talk to prospects that we had, people that have been through our program, prospects we had that we hadn't closed. Where are we closing these opportunities? And then she also had people knows in the enterprise world herself. And we did a research project to find out, what is the space? What's the gap? What can Bill and Anna not see about their own company that they're missing? And so that really was the answer for us, was to get, again, someone that we could trust to take us into some discomfort there and go, okay, this makes sense. And the funny thing is we're still working through it because there's a whole different language. You're selling something into an enterprise versus selling it to an entrepreneurial type customer. It's a completely different language, different buying and selling process, much longer cycle, different conversations. And so we're even still learning that terminology and the language to be able to communicate that.
And how quickly would you say that you started to see some traction there? Like, from the time that you made that adjustment to say, we're going to focus more on enterprise, how quickly was it, like, for example, the next day that you started to see people being more receptive, or did it take several months, or what did that look like in terms of once you knew kind of where the bullseye was and you started going towards it? When did that start to actually show you some promise there?
I would say days. It was really quick. It's funny when you hit on the right thing, because we were pounding and pounding and pounding away in the wrong direction. All of a sudden, bam, it just clicks in. Yeah. In fact, we're in the process of doing our website, redoing our marketing materials to go in this new direction. But we already have leads. I think we're going to close one tomorrow that already just appeared before we can even get the stuff done. When you hit on the right recipe, all of a sudden they just appear.
It's amazing. We talk to our clients about this all the time, where if you're not clear on who your ideal client is, your messaging doesn't resonate with them, you're saying the wrong thing to the wrong person, it's a struggle. But the moment that you kind of reach that tipping point or that connection of like the right message to the right person, just boom, things really start to shift it to in a positive way. So that's great to hear. That's been your experience. I'm also wondering, how did you take this to market from a pricing perspective? What you're offering, how did you know what to price these programs and your offers in the work that you're doing today? How do you kind of get to that structure that you're using?
We kind of took two directions to get there. One was we were able to find some of that from the research, know what competitors, who we're up against out there. And this is an interesting thing because we're basically a startup at this point still, and we're going up against some big consulting firms out there. So how do we differentiate ourselves? But it turns out in our case, in that space, all of a sudden we went from price being a huge issue all the time, constantly, to suddenly being not an issue at all.
Just to clarify, do you mean when you were targeting smaller companies, price was a major issue? And the moment you went to enterprise, then price was kind of insignificant, wasn't?
If we can move the needle like we say we can move the needle, there's no whatever. It doesn't matter what it costs.
And how does your price then stack up? So you're going against much larger firms. For you, is the strategy and the thinking to try and be at the same level as them, to be more than them, to be less than them? How do you think about that in comparison to these more established players?
I think we're still learning that. I think we don't have quite the granularity on that we would like. It's been more about, let's price it. We've kind of started with the talent we need on the team and say, what is the best talent in the world going to cost? And what kind of opportunities does that create? And that's where the price needs to be. And then we haven't hit a ceiling on that yet. So we're still kind of experimenting with that. Literally had clients say to us, they used to say, oh, that's a lot. And now we literally had a client last week say, okay, and price is not going to be the thing we decide on here. Okay. They said it.
I love that. What else have you done or things specifically around competing with larger companies? What do you talk about internally? What are some things that you are thinking about, talking about, or you've actually maybe already done so that you can go ahead and go toe to toe and win business and take business away from some of these larger companies? Because many times smaller firms or independent consultants feel they just can't compete and might as well not even try and enter that ring if there's a more established player. That's exactly what you're doing. And so I'd love if you can share any lessons or best practices or just things that you're talking about internally in relation to that.
Our plan is to scale up by bringing people in, to building out a coaching or a consultant framework network. Because if I try to go and get into those companies, I won't succeed. They don't know me. I don't have relationships. I don't speak the language. I'll be stumbling through it. We need to find people in that world. This is my experience, is that there are a lot of people in the world who are, and I'm just going to throw out demographics, say 55 to 60 years old. They've spent 20, 25 years in a certain industry, whatever that is, ball bearings or pharmaceuticals or whatever. And somehow they've been cast out and through some reorganization or exit, whatever. And now they're trying to figure out what to do. And a lot of them become consultants and coaches. Our plan is to bring people on from those spaces and provide them with a framework that would work for the companies that they work with, where they already know people. So they have relationships. They don't have experience being a coach. That's our plan, is to find people from those worlds.
Okay. So you're kind of looking at, you will provide almost the license, the framework, the training for them, and then you'll build a network that will then apply your intellectual property. They'll need to generate their own leads through their network, whatever else they're doing, but they'll be armed with your system and your tools to go to market.
Yes.
Got it. The other thing I'm interested about is family business, right? The Civilis, before, your wife, we're looking at the website, it looks like there's maybe more than one family member that is part of the company. Can you just talk about that for a moment in terms of who's actually involved from your family and what that experience has been like?
Yeah. My brother's involved with Civilis, with my wife, Kim. There are two Troys on that website. I'm involved sometimes with some projects. And Kim is advising me. She's the brains of the family. She's the Fortune 500 executive in the family. I'm the self-made entrepreneur. She's also got opinions on this corporate direction, the enterprise direction Polaris is taking. But I think that one of the challenges in our case is that all of us are alphas. And how do you figure out who's in charge today? So we've kind of divided things up to make that clear. But also, we all have different strengths. So I feel like it's a lot of times like trying to put together an all-star team for the Olympics. For basketball, every person who comes to the all-star team is the person on their team, or the man, right? Or the woman, depending on it's female or male team. And they're used to being the star. How do they learn to play together. That's a whole different thing. That's what we spend a lot of time talking about. And really the way you have to do that is just to be transparent about it. Yet the issues out there, this is what I think, this is what I don't think, these are my issues. And it goes back to some of those things we were talking about, like what's a decision, right? Because that's where you drive each other nuts. You went off and did what? You didn't even ask us. Or can't you make that? Let's go. It's that sort of stuff. And this happens with clients too, not just family members in a family company. We did this with a client the other day that is in the space launching things into orbit for NASA. And we sat there with a team of people they're most brilliant on the planet. And we said, okay, write down 3 things that could keep this company from succeeding, could keep these space vehicles from not making it. Now, what are those things? There wasn't a single intellectual, informational thing on the list. There was no worry about rocket nozzles or launch trajectories or blah, blah. It was all about infighting, politics. It was all the interpersonal stuff. Ultimately, it's just about that, whether it's a family company or a big enterprise.
Yeah, I mean, that's been my cousin Sam is co-founder here, and we've built different businesses over the years. I completely agree. That's been my experience as well, that having open kind of lines of communication, being very transparent, being direct when you need to, just getting on the same page and doing whatever is necessary to do so has kind of been our recipe for success in that area. But it makes a lot of sense.
We also have a little decision-making process we use too, which is the short version of it is that everyone gets their say, but everyone doesn't get their way. Before we have some decision needs to be made, okay, who's the decision maker? The first decision to make is who the decision maker is, because someone has to make a decision and we all have to support whatever they decide, whether we agree with it or not. Okay, Jack, you're the decision maker on this. We're going to go, and it could be somebody not even in the company. It could be the receptionist, it could be whatever. Somebody we're all going to go like, okay, didn't win that one, but I'm going to salute it. That's a big thing, is deciding that you're going to support the decision versus having to win the argument.
That's great. We've done something similar at Consulting Success, where we've kind of broken down the different departments or functions of the company and essentially assigned who is the decision maker for each one of those.
There you go.
We also may be working with them. Now, I'm wondering, is that something that you've been doing for a while, and what has been the result of doing that?
Yeah, we've done it for a long time. We've probably done it for 15 or 20 years, and I just love it. And it's almost, I don't say it's a game, but it's almost like extra fun to even come up with someone unique to be the decision maker. Let's call in someone and they're going to be the decision maker on this. It just really helps to lighten things up and realize it's one decision. We can change it later, but let's just go and then make the best case and then make the decision and go.
It's also, I think, really powerful in giving more responsibility and kind of having ownership, where, as you said, make a decision. If it doesn't work out, then at least we learn from it. But you're giving people the ability to feel like it's something that they own. And so they're going to want to show up and do their best to really increase the chances of being successful.
Right.
Just a couple of final questions before we wrap up. One, I'm wondering, inside of Polaris, as well as maybe the other consulting company, anything right now that you're doing with AI, or anything that you're thinking about when it comes to AI and how you might leverage it inside of your business?
I'll tell you, the biggest thing we're doing with Polaris right now is helping our clients work through the emotional impact of AI.
Yeah, expand on that for a moment.
Yeah, there are way smarter people than us that are working on actually the technology. That's not plenty of that. But employees are fearful, and business owners are fearful of what this means because they don't know what it means. And what could it mean? Is my job going away? Is my company going away? Is my entire industry going away? We're actually spending a lot of time helping people work through the emotional load of that. How do you stay on task? How do you explore it? Figure out what's going on, stay on top of it, not let it distract you, because that's one of those things right now. We talked about how your brain is a threat detection and mitigation addict. The media is feeding us. There really is AI and there really are changes happening, but you've got to be careful not to be swallowed up by the fear of AI, that you stop taking action today. You start just fixating on the story after story after story of AI, because the media will give you that and just freeze you, paranoia. We're spending time working with clients and helping to work through the emotion of that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Final question here, and then we'll make sure people can learn where they should go to get more information about Civilis and also Polaris Institute. Is there a book that you've either read or listened to in the last 6 months or so that you feel has either been very helpful for you? It could be fiction or nonfiction, just something that has been helpful in your journey, or maybe just something you really enjoyed that you might recommend to others.
Sure. And in fact, before I do that, I want to mention, because you often ask people about habits too, and I want to mention one that's going to be very controversial with people that I did about 5 years ago, which was turn the TV off. I don't watch TV, and that's a shock. Well, actually, my wife and I go to movies sometimes. I'm not in front of the television really at all. That seems crazy to some people. What happens then is that amazing number of hours appear in your life that you didn't realize were being swallowed up. It'll be like 7 o'clock and you're like, I got 3 or 4 hours before I go to bed. What am I going to do? I don't know what to do, right? So that then leads to great things to read and other things to do. So that's why I want to mention Turn the TV Off. I want to mention 3 books real quickly. First 2 are really Polaris related. One that really was pivotal for me when we were putting Polaris together, which is called How Emotions Are Made by Lisa Feldman Barrett. She's a Boston University professor who explains from a physiological standpoint why we are emotional, what the point of emotions are, where they come from, how they happen. And it really kind of helps to see things from a functional standpoint versus, because when you're in an emotional state, it feels like that's reality, and it's not. It's just something your brain's creating. And then from change management standpoint, we try to tell everybody to work with James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. Start with the basic things, a step at a time. You've got to sneak up on change. You can't let it happen. And then the last one for fun, one of the things I started doing with a friend of mine when I turned the TV off, and we do a Zoom book club just to give us something to talk about. And I've been reading, just for fun, Undaunted Courage, which is the story of Lewis and Clark's expedition. And I'll tell you from a business standpoint, if you want to read about hard work, these guys drug tons and tons of stuff in boats up the Missouri River against the current, slower than they could walk. Like every day, Lewis or Clark would get out and walk the shore. They could walk faster and they'd meet them at the next camp. That's hard work for 1,500 miles to pull 5 tons of stuff up a river on a boat. There's some perspective for you.
And there you have it for today's episode between Michael and Bill. If you enjoyed today's podcast, then as always, be sure that you hit that subscribe button wherever you listen to your favorite shows. And if you want to help support the Consulting Success Podcast, you can do so by heading over to Apple Podcasts, where there you'll have a chance to leave a rating and review. Ratings and reviews truly help our show grow and get in front of more people just like you. Also, a reminder to visit consultingsuccess.com/grow if you want to work directly with the Consulting Success team to receive personal coaching and support to optimize and grow your consulting business, marketing, and revenue. Again, that is consultingsuccess.com/grow. That's the end of the line for us this week. We look forward to talking to you again next week. Until next time.